In this video, we're going to review the evidence of evolution. What is evolution? Evolution is change in a population over time. A single organism cannot evolve within its lifetime. Evolution refers more to the big picture. It happens gradually over generations within a population. Evidence supports that all organisms are related and can be traced back to a common ancestor. Organisms with similar molecular and anatomical structures are descendants of one organism. Phylogeny is the study of these evolutionary relationships between organisms. Phylogeny is usually represented in a phylogenetic tree or a cladogram. The organisms that are more closely related have fewer branches between them and are closer to each other on the cladogram or phylogenetic tree. All diversity of life or variation or differences can be related to mutations. Mutations are changes in DNA that might make a favorable trait that helps the organism to be more fit, which means it survives long enough to reproduce. This then increases that genetic trait's occurrence within the population. So you'll see the genetic frequency for that trait increase. The fossil record, homologies, and biogeography provide evidence for evolution. The fossil record is the history of life preserved in fossils in sedimentary rock. Older fossils are found deeper in the layer of rock than the newer fossils. The fossil record provides evidence that there has been life on Earth for 300 million years, and over that time, organisms have changed. These changes have been gradual, and you can note changes within these organisms found in older fossils to the newer fossils, and even related to organisms that are currently living today. In this example, the fossil record provides evidence of ancestry of the modern-day horse, which is in the genus Equus, which is located at the top of the photo. Homologies also provide evidence of common ancestry. Homologies are similarities found within organisms. Remember, homo means the same. We'll talk about three types of homologies: anatomical, molecular, and developmental. Anatomical or structural similarities provide evidence of a common ancestor because they have very similar shapes or structures. Homologous structures have different external structures and functions, but have very similar internal structures which provide evidence that they developed similarly. For example, the arm of a human, the wing of a bat, and the flipper of a whale all have very different external structures and functions, but if you look at the bones, they're very similar. This is an example of an anatomical homology, that they have a common ancestor and developed similarly. Vestigial structures found in modern organisms have lost all or most of their original function. They get smaller and smaller over time until they eventually disappear. They were once functional in their ancestors, but no longer serve an essential purpose in the organism. For example, think about some snakes that have leg bones that are inside. They don't really come outside of their bodies, but they're still there and they're leftover evidence of legs. Whales also have pelvic bones, even though they don't have legs. Look at the picture. It's pretty interesting to see that they have these pelvic bones and little residual legs that they don't use. Also, think about the appendix of a human. We don't need it, and it often gets removed if it becomes inflamed. Conversely, analogous structures do not provide evidence of a common ancestor. Examples of analogous structures are the wings of a bird and the wings of an insect. They both provide the same function to fly, but they are not evolutionarily that closely related. Think about the wings of a bird. They contain bones inside of the wing. An insect, however, has an exoskeleton on the outside of its body. They did not develop the same way. The second type of homology is molecular homology. Scientists study the DNA and amino acid sequences of organisms to find similarities. The more alike they are, the more closely related those organisms are. If you look at the amino acid sequences of a human and a chimp, they are much more closely related than that of a human and a lamprey. Think about DNA fingerprinting. You can identify the father of a baby by looking at the similarities between the father and the baby's DNA. The same principle applies here. The more similar the DNA, the more closely related the organisms. The third type of homology is developmental homology, where they study the similarities in the development of organisms. Embryology is the study of embryos of organisms. In this photo, if you study the embryos at different stages of development between a lizard and a tortoise, you will notice that there are definitely more similarities between them than there are between a lizard and a human at the same stages of development. Now look at the embryos of a pig and a human. Compared to the lizard and the human at the same stages of development in the embryo, the human and the pig have much more similarities, which shows that they have a much more recent common ancestor. Biogeography is the study of species distribution throughout geographical locations over time. Biogeography identifies patterns of species characteristics in relation to their location. Geographical barriers such as mountain ranges and oceans are related to the divergence of traits within species. Divergence means that they are becoming more different. Once the differences are great enough for the organisms to no longer have the ability to produce fertile offspring together, they are identified as separate species. To wrap it all up, evolution is responsible for the diversity or variation found in all life. The evidence found in the fossil record and through the study of anatomical, molecular, and developmental homologies, along with biogeography, supports the concept of evolution. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to use the resource folder to further study the vocabulary for this unit.